This video has been brought to you by ToroShop.de. They sell some very cool radio-controlled military vehicles and they ship all across the globe. So if you're interested, I'll leave the link to the website in the description down below. And if you decide to buy something, make sure to use the discount code LUCKY2018 for 20 euros off your order. Myth number 1. It is possible to have a 100-second reload. So this myth required a bit of research, so I skimmed out the whole tech tree looking for the longest standard reload possible, and eventually, after debating with my Twitch viewers about it, I came to the conclusion that the tier 10 French artillery, the Bataillon 155-58, was the best option, because of its already incredibly long 50-second clip reload. So after that we started thinking about ways how to further decrease the clip reload. And then suddenly one of my Twitch viewers suggested that I should put a 50% crew of another vehicle inside it, resulting in an incredibly poor 25% crew inside the Batchat, which managed to increase the reload to a whopping 75 seconds. But that still isn't quite long enough to confirm this myth. So then we started thinking of ways to further increase the reload in game. So the first thing that popped in my mind was to try an ammo rack or kill the Batchat's loader in game. But that was so incredibly hard to do since the Batchat only had 490 hit points. So that idea was pretty much a lost case. But then suddenly someone in the Twitch chat had a brilliant idea to stun the Batchat when it was right about to start its clip reload. So that idea sounded a lot more doable, so I went to Midgard in my handicapped Batchat together with an M44 for stunning me and the Type 64 to keep me spotted. So yeah, at this point of recording I suddenly realized that the World of Tanks replay system for some reason doesn't show the reload timer. So instead I'm going to show you guys a clip from my live stream where we tested this myth out. So I hope you guys don't mind. I'm going to roll the clip right now and I'll see you in a bit. And 2. Okay, now I am going to say go in like when the final shell is ready. Then he's going to stun me. Then I'm going to fire the final shell and then we'll see what the reload is. Go. Perfect! 105 seconds, which means that this myth is confirmed. GG boys. GG boys. GG boys. Okay, that's a pretty easy one. That was a pretty easy one. So there we go. As you all could see in the clip, we ended up with a whopping 106 seconds reload. So now with the testing done, let's quickly move on to the conclusion of this myth. So conclusion, as long as you have a very long base reload, a very crippled crew and RT focusing you all the goddamn time, it is indeed possible to reach a reload over 100 seconds. So therefore I can safely say that this myth is confirmed. Myth number 2. Space armor can make any other tank invincible. So basically what this myth is all about is you have tank A, which is the gunner, tank B, which is the tank with the prominent spaced armor, in this case the Panzer IV-H, and tank C, which is the tank that will be receiving the shot. And what we are trying to do is set the tanks up as shown in this little draft I drew right here on the screen right now. And basically what is going to happen, tank A will shoot at tank C while making sure the shell passes through the tank's B spaced armor. So that way we can test out how strong spaced armor actually is when it's set up like this. So to test it out, I went yet again to Midgard in my Leopard 1 that has a very decent 268mm of standard APCR penetration. And considering the Panzer IV spaced armor is only 8mm thick, so make that 16 since in this setup the shell has to go through that twice because of the shape of the Panzer IV's turret. And then at the end the Tiger's frontal armor is 100mm, so on paper 268mm of pen should be more than enough to pen the spaced armor and the Tiger's armor very reliably indeed. So let's go ahead and test this out. So here we go, all the tanks are set up and... Wait, what? Did that just really happen? Okay, this is very interesting because if you take a look at the shot from another angle, you can clearly see that the shot indeed pans the first slab of 8mm thick spaced armor, but then it doesn't come out of the second slab of 8mm thick space armor. So does this mean that 8mm thick space armor just completely absorbed the Leopard's 268mm pen shell? So when we came to that conclusion, we decided to test this out one more time, but this time with a much more heavily hitting AP round, which is from no other than the Jagdpanzer E100. And in case you are wondering why we don't just use the Jaegeru's 420mm penetrating heat rounds, well, that's simply because of the fact that heat ammo pretty much loses all of its penetration when panning the first layer of space armor. So with that in mind, we moved on and set up the whole scene again, but with this time the Jagdpanzer E100 is indeed firing instead of the Leopard 1. So here we go, I pull the trigger and even the Jagdpanzer's E100 299 pen AP rounds get completely absorbed and no damage whatsoever against the Tiger 1. So now with all the possible testing done, let's quickly move on to the conclusion of this myth. So conclusion, no matter how big the penetration of a shell is, it simply doesn't get past the second layer of spaced armor, even with spaced armor as thin as 8mm. So I guess massive thumbs up for Wargaming for Realism, since apparently 16mm of spaced armor is enough to stop a shell with 299mm of penetration, which of course means that this myth is weirdly enough confirmed. Myth number 3. You can launch a UE in the air with an ammo rack turret. So when I saw this suggestion pop up in the comment section, I immediately added to the list, since I became very curious about this one as well. But is it possible? Well, let's find out. So to test this myth out, me and my Twitch testing squad went to Paris with a lot of easy ammo rackable tanks, in this case the T-28 prototypes, some tanks with high module damage like the Guerrilla 15, and of course a ton of UE-57. So at first we tried to damage the prototypes ammo racks one by one, and once we finally managed to damage one ammo rack, we set it up next to the ridge so the UE could drive on top of the turret, which took us a couple of tries, but once we finally got it, the time started ticking of course, because both vehicles were getting damaged because they were on top of each other. So I had to act quickly. I aimed my gun at the ammo rack, I prayed to RNGs as I pulled my trigger, and boom, there she goes. And yes, even though it is not a lot of airtime, the UE does indeed fly with it and making a little jump in the air. So conclusion, as long as you're in the right situation, it should be possible, and even though the UE doesn't get launched sky high, it still made a little jump in the air, so therefore I call this myth confirmed. Myth number 4. You can make a small tank invincible. So basically how I think I'm going to achieve this is by just hopping in a small tank, in this case the ELC AMX, and then we simply build a square of mouses around it, and then hopefully becoming invincible. So to test this out, we went to Nebelberg, and indeed here I am in my tiny little ELC AMX, and soon the mighty mouse wall is being formed around me. But once the wall was formed and the enemies opened fire, we ran into a couple of issues, with the first one being the derp guns and the HE ammo. Because of the HE shells' splash damage, even they couldn't physically see me, they still managed to splash inside the mouse wall, resulting into me taking splash damage and eventually dying. So we tried it again, but this time without HE, and this time we ran into issue number 2, which was that there were some sneaky little buggers who climbed up the hill and shot me from above. So at the third and final test, with all those issues eliminated, it did eventually work and I became pretty much invincible, even with the mouses being dead, since the mouses were pretty much too heavy for the enemies to push them aside and to actually kill me. So conclusion, indeed this myth has a lot of issues with HE fire and tank shooting from above, but if you manage to eliminate these factors, it is indeed possible to create a wall and to make a tank quote unquote invincible. So therefore I call this myth confirmed. Myth number 5. It is possible to loop shells over cover. So for this myth I needed a standard tank that will act as a target, which is in my case the Panther, and of course a tank with a gun that might be capable of shooting over cover. So the first gun type that came into my mind was obviously howitzer guns, since artillery use howitzer guns as well, and I think that it's a well-known fact that artillery can indeed shoot over obstacles. So with that in mind, my first choice went to the T-49. So now with the tanks picked, let's enter the testing room. So here we are yet again in Midgard, and the Panther is going to set itself up behind a terrain bump that is just tall enough to hide the entirety of its tank. And then me and my Type 49 is going to settle about 100 meters away from the Panther. So here we go, I aim at the spot where the Panther should be hiding behind, I pull the trigger and it doesn't seem to fly over. So I tried it a couple more times just to make sure that it wasn't the accuracy's fault, since it's indeed pretty hard to pinpoint a howitzer gun at that kind of range. But after almost firing every HE round I had, I still didn't manage to even splash the Panther once. So I scrapped the T-49 from my testing list and I tried it again, but this time with the Cruiser 2's howitzer gun. That is also famous for being the gun with the lowest shell velocity in the game, because I thought that maybe a low shell velocity is the key to success. Well, let's find out. So we tested it again, the exact same setup, but this time of course instead of the T-49 I'm using the Cruiser 2. So I wait for the Panther to set up, I go stand at around the same distance as the T-49, I pull my trigger and obviously the first couple of shots misses simply because of the gun's very bad accuracy. But a few misses later I couldn't believe my eyes, since I actually managed to land a direct hit on the Panther while it was standing behind cover. So just to be sure, I tried it a couple more times and eventually I managed to do it a total of 2 times. So conclusion, as shown on the test footage, the howitzers with a very low shell velocity tend to create a prominent loop in their shell trajectory. So as long as you have a howitzer with a ridiculously low shell velocity, you should be able to hit your enemies that are completely hidden behind cover. So therefore I can safely say that this myth is confirmed. So guys, that was all for today's Mythbusters episode, so I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider giving the video a like, I would highly appreciate it. Also, if you're new to my channel and you like my videos, make sure to smack that subscribe button so you will stay up to date with all my future content. And also, if you know any awesome myth that hasn't been tested out yet, feel free to drop them in the comment section down below, and who knows, you might see your myth pop up in the next episode. But for now, I'm just going to say have an awesome day, and I'll catch you guys later.